שבוע טוב ומבורך, חנוכה שמח, חודש טוב ומבורך. It's nice to be back here. Chanukah, Tevet. I get to see some friends and familiar faces. I'm going to try and give you a little gift in honor of Chanukah to take it home with you tonight. Something way beyond any one of those wrap packages that you got in the last few nights. And way beyond any check that somebody can give you. Something that you can actually utilize. I want to go back to the beginning of the 90s when I was studying in yeshiva in Israel. And I had a mashgiach in the yeshiva. His name was Rav Gedalia Eisman, Zecher Tzadik Kadosh Livracha. He was a great, great rabbi and a genius in all areas of life. And he used to try to have a positive effect on us. But we were young teenagers. It wasn't always an easy job. And one day he spoke to a few of us privately, and it was right before the holiday of Chanukah. And the discussion was, what are our Chanukah plans? And we told him we're going to have fun. And he said, where? And we said, Rabbi, we plead the fifth on the subject. And he said, what does that mean? And we left it like that. And he said, and why can't you have fun here? So he said, Rabbi, this is yeshiva. We learn, we do, we clock our hours big time. But once in a while, we need to clean our head out. That was the term he used. And then he looked at us and he said, it's all in your mind. We walked away, we didn't understand what he meant. All in your mind. We just told you want to clean our head out. What is that doing? And we went to a different rabbi in the school because we were curious to hear what he has to say on the subject. And we told him, his name was, he's still alive, Rabbi Lawrence. And we said, Rabbi Lawrence, this is what Rabbi Eisman told us. What does it mean it's all in your mind? Do you have fun in your mind? Can you be happy in your mind? You need the right environment, the right surroundings, the right... And this is what he says. He said, I'll tell you a tale. Whether it happened or not, I don't know, but it'll bring out a point. So there were two yeshiva boys that dormed. They were roommates. One of them was a heavy-set guy, and naturally, as a result, he was always hot. The other one was this little skinny, frail boy, and naturally, he was always cold. Some of us that are married in the room know what that means. One spouse is hot, air-conditioned heat, this side, that. Thank God in the cars now, you can set this side this way, this side that way. It saves a lot of issues. This has been an issue in Jewish history. The Shulchan Aruch addresses this. The Gemara addresses this. What do you do in situations like this? But they got two roommates. It's a winter night. The skinny guy is closing the window, closing the shade, putting towels so no draft should come in. And the other guy's moving everything and opening everything. He's like, what do you want? It's hot, I can't. Like this, they're fighting back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And for 15 minutes, the heavyset guy says, I'm not going to fight with him anymore. Enough is enough. And from his bed, without even getting up, he takes a shoe, throws it at the window, boom, shattered. Now he got his way. A whole night, both of them didn't sleep. The skinny guy's like, it's freezing, you're crazy, I can't sleep. And the other guy's like, couldn't be better. He's enjoying every minute. 6 o'clock in the morning comes, the sun shines, and they're both awake, and they look and they see the window is whole and closed, and by accident the mirror shattered. It's all in the mind. In one person's mind, they heard noise breaking something, and to him it became cold. And the other person's mind, they heard something breaking, and to him, it was so beautiful. The state of a Jewish young boy and where he's going to be in a few years from now is in his mind, in his teenage years. If when I'm 13, 14, 16, 18, 20, I'm proud of who I am, and I walk the streets with my head lifted up high, then when I'm 30, I marry a Jewish girl. When I'm 40, 50, 60, I see my children and grandchildren marrying Jewish girls. But if when I'm 16 or 15 and I feel second class, or I feel like I'm lacking something or missing something, I don't have the Jewish pride in my DNA, then when I get older, what's left? It just withers away. And honestly, I think that's what Chanukah symbolizes in many ways. But one of the many ways it symbolizes it is self-sacrifice for the sake of doing what's right. Today we try to commercialize things to make it more attractive and easier to attract crowds, even though on the intellectual, if we were intellectual, we wouldn't always do this. But I'm going to be the bad guy right now for a second. No, life is not always easy. And yes, life does bring hardships. And there are times that you actually have to struggle. And in order to make a change, even the most minute one, sometimes it takes large effort. But Chanukah teaches us that for the large effort that you make, God pays a much larger dividend in every situation that comes along the way. And now pay attention to this. The Rama brings down that there's a custom to eat dairy on the holiday of Chanukah. This custom came from the fact that the miracle of Chanukah happened through a dairy event, believe it or not. We had a woman who symbolized Jewish heroism, Yehudit, who goes and serves the general on the opposing side cheese that makes him thirsty, then gives him wine to drink, he goes to sleep, she cuts his head off, she brings his head to the gates of Jerusalem, places it on top, and that was a turning point in the battle. And symbolizing that, we go and we make a holiday that one of the things that we have a custom to do is to eat dairy. There was a great rabbi in Israel, I'm sure you all heard his name, Rav Yaakov Yagen, he was a big posek halacha, and he says he doesn't get this whole thing. He says, number one, we know that women don't go to the army and aren't fighters. So to turn a Jewish custom based on a woman who did a heroic act that has to do with an act of war, it's a little bit against the norm of what we would normally do. Number two, there were many other great miracles in Jewish history that happened in wars, even without somebody making effort. Like God sending an angel and killing 180,000 soldiers in one night. Or many, many other incidents throughout the Tanakh, that miracles of battle happened so much greater in so many different situations. And suddenly here, we make this big deal out of an incident, which doesn't seem like such a big incident on its own. And then he says, number three, why the dairy of all things? Why not wine? There were two parts, right? She gave him dairy to eat. It made him thirsty. As a result, he drank wine and went to sleep. So if anything, what allowed him to bring his head was the wine, not the dairy. So let's make Chanukah another holiday, like Purim, drink wine. That should be the custom. Why do we stick to the dairy? These are the questions that Maran Rav Yaakov Yagen asked, and honestly, for those of you who learned a lot of his Torah, it's a little bit out of character for him. He normally wouldn't ask these questions without a real strong punchline. And here's his message. He says, why dairy? This is why. Let's go back to the story in history. The Greeks wanted multiple things when it came to the Jews. Some that are more famous, some that are less famous. The more famous ones where they had an agenda against keeping Shabbat, they had an agenda against Brit Milah, they had an agenda against keeping the lunar month the way we count our years. They had all these problems. They had an agenda against studying Torah that we're familiar with. But then there was another one. The Midrash says, they came to the Jews and they told them, Kitvu lachem al keren ashor, right on the horn of your ox, we have no part of the Jewish nation. Meaning, they wanted to infiltrate into our culture. They wanted to bring their culture into us. They wanted us to be less proud of our identity as a result of viewing their philosophy as something that was higher up. Okay. And they tried doing this. And the Jews were in a very tough spot. Because if they would follow this new law that they made by writing this statement of we don't believe in God on their animals, really what they would be doing is conceding to atheism, and that no Jew would ever do. If they don't do so, they risk death. Then there was no court system. Rulers, dictators, they did whatever they wanted. They killed whatever they wanted. And nobody wanted to die. So they came up with a creative solution. Jews always come up with creative solutions. Their solution was they instantly slaughtered all their animals. No Jew owned any animals anymore. And now there's no horns to write anything on. What's the outcome of such an action? That now we don't have meat. Because in order to eat meat, you need an animal to slaughter in a kosher way, so you should be able to eat it. So for 3 years and 8 months, the Jewish nation could not eat meat because it just wasn't available. They didn't have freezers like today, there was nowhere to store it. The rabbis teach us, I don't know the science behind dairy, if any of you are in culinary school, you may know this better than me, but it seems like there is a way to make certain types of cheeses out of dairy products and preserve them in a way that they don't demand refrigeration. And that's what they did. And the product that she served, this general, was one of those dairy products 3 years and 8 months later after this decision to go and slaughter all their animals. And then, from this he felt thirsty because it was a salty cheese. She gave him wine and went to sleep. He comes over the Yashiv and says, you know why we make a big deal out of the cheese? Because it wasn't Yehudit who did anything. It wasn't the guy falling asleep. It was all God that was pulling the strings. But why did God allow this miracle to happen for the Jews? Why did God allow 13 people to stand up against an army of millions? There's an opinion in Chazal that it was upwards of 60 million soldiers and win a war. Because there was young Jewish boys and girls that got up and said, I will not erase my Jewish pride. I will not write, I'm not part of this group. Even at the cost of the self-sacrifice of no longer being able to eat meat, of having to change their diet and their life habits. Because when you make a sacrifice, God comes back and says, I pay back multifolds in return. Let me share with you an amazing story. I have a friend, well, today's my friend. He came up to me after a lecture in Israel a few years ago, and he tells me, I know you travel the world telling stories. Let me give you a good one. I said, sure. He identified himself as Isaac Bergstein. Isaac Bergstein. He said he was 21 years old when this story happened. It was Friday evening. He was in his house. His parents are somewhat traditional. You know, let's talk about traditional Jews for a minute. I love them. They always come to you with who their grandfather was. You know what a tzaddik my grandfather was? So for years I used to answer, what about the grandson? And then it would be an awkward moment of silence. So now I have a new thing. I say, let me hear what a tzaddik. And the guy goes on ranting and raving. In this town, I don't know all the towns of Sephardic communities around the world or whatever. I personally am Syrian. In Chaled, my grandfather, he was, blah, blah, blah. I used to go every morning to Chatzot at night and Nitz in the morning and study and then go to the marketplace and then go back and learn again. And the whole story. And I tell him, great, I want to ask you a question. He said, what? I said, you're really proud of this, aren't you? This is, of course. I said, in 40 years from now, God should give me the life and the health. I'm going to meet your grandchild. What's your grandchild going to tell me about his grandfather? My grandfather made Kiddush Friday night on wine, and 5 minutes later made Kiddush on the TV and sat on it like a couch potato. So what's going to be then? If you're so proud of your grandfather, make sure your grandson has the same liberty that you have to be able to say about his grandfather. Give him that credit. This guy tells me, I come from a traditional family, and in my house they make Kiddush Friday night. This is Friday evening, I'm sitting by Kiddush, and Kiddush is over, there's going to be a meal. In the middle of the meal, I tell my mom, I'm out, I got to go. And she says, where are you going? Friday night, stay home. Where are you going? I'm going clubbing. She says, it's too early for clubbing now. What clubbing? Second of all, it's Friday night. We're traditional. We don't do that Friday night. Because my friends are all going, you're not going to make me be the only one that's left out. What? What does that have to do with anything now? For years you didn't do it. Suddenly tonight you woke up, I'm getting older, I'm already after the army, and in Israel they give 3 years of their life to protect our borders. Leave me alone, I'm not a baby anymore, enough of this. Anyway, I'm going on a trip in a few weeks with my friends around the world and back. Then I'm going to do whatever I want. Either way, I'm going. I was respectful to you, I told you. Appreciate that I was respectful to you. That's what he tells his mother. His mother couldn't say much, because she herself wasn't the most righteous, but she hinted to him that she's not so pleased with him. And he said he loved his mother dearly. And he said, amongst the many things that always kept this tight connection with his mother was that when he was in the army and he was struggling, because it's not an easy thing to do, especially where he was stationed, his mother sometimes would take a journey in the car for over 2 hours each way just to bring him home-cooked food when they allowed her to do it. He said, so he had this warm feeling towards his mom that was always there for him. And when he saw that disappointment on her face when she said, when he told her I'm going clubbing on a Friday night, he said, I couldn't do it. But on the other hand, I wanted to go. And what was I going to tell my friends? I'm not coming with you? Why not? And like this, the thing goes back and forth in his mind. And he says, finally, I got the courage, and I called up my friends, and I told them, he called them up on Friday night. That's what he was holding in life. I called up my friends, and I told them, I'm not going to Shabbat. He's giving Musa on the phone on Shabbat. I'm not going with you on Shabbat. The name of the club that his friends went to was called the Dolphinarium. That night, a suicide bomber went in there, and many, many people died. And the time they would have arrived at the door was 1 minute before this terrorist, the Machshemot Shem Zichro, blew himself up. None of his friends survived. Did he have to make a hard choice? Yeah, for a 21-year-old to give up on his party with his friends? I don't think the party is the big deal. It's peer pressure. To be able to face your friends and say, no, that's not me, I won't do it. That's the hardest thing in the world. But exactly that hard effort, exactly that strength, exactly that fight is what saved his life. And this is what we've seen over and over again over the years in so many different situations. One of the things that's less pleasant to talk about, but because you call yourselves a youth movement, I think we have to address the issue openly, is our pandemic of children experimenting with drugs and then later on having to deal with the consequences for the rest of their lives. And none of our boys are bad. There is no bad Jewish child. That does not exist. There's no bad Jewish boy. There's no bad Jewish girl. There's something called pained Jewish boys and girls. If you're proud of who you are, you're not in pain. Because you walk the street with pride. That's the greatest drug preventive that we can ever have. That'll prevent our next tragedy. Self-pride. When we look in the mirror and say, I'm Jewish, I was blessed, I am great. In life, day in, day out, we have to make choices. And the choices we make affect us for good. Let me share with you a couple of stories about choices in a few minutes I have left. I have a close acquaintance who I got acquainted through a story. I heard a story from a rabbi named Abdul Karif in Israel. I heard this through a recording. I didn't even know the rabbi at the time. But before I repeat stories, I like verifying them. I got a hold of his number. I called him and he said, why do you ask me? Call the guy straight. Speak to him directly. Let him tell you the story. This is what this gentleman shares with me. He was a Kollel student at the time. Currently he's teaching already. And he had 7 children. We had about 7 children. It's a nice sized family. In Bnei Brak, where he lived, that's actually called a small family. Yeah, really. If you don't have 12 kids there, they say Tehillim for you on Shabbat. They worried. His wife's pregnant with their 8th. She's due a week before Passover. Timing, that's not so easy. Timing is. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Can you envision that? I'll tell you a little secret. My mother Diana had more than 8 children. She had 11. We are currently 10. But when we were at the number 8, I grew up living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And I want to tell you something shocking. I don't feel deprived. I never sat in the therapist's office and cried about being born poor or lacking any privilege or missing anything. If anything, the thing that I miss most is the 2-bedroom apartment. And let me shock you even more. Every every single Shabbat that my dad was in the United States, he used to travel a lot, but when he was in the U.S., we had guests. And not guests that came for a meal and left. Guests that slept. That means 8 of us that shared a bedroom gave up the 1 bedroom we had for guests. And we were not deprived. We were as happy as could be. I remember offhand over 10 Shabbat Chatans that my mom made for young couples that got married. With tens of people in a 2-bedroom apartment. Because if there's room in the heart, there's room in the house. And if there's no room in the heart, there's no room anywhere else. We see it clearly. It's an unbelievable thing. This guy had 7 kids, the 8th on the way, living in a 2-bedroom apartment. To him, that wasn't an issue. But he had a different issue. The apartment wasn't his. And his landlord called him and told him that he needs the apartment back because he has a daughter that's getting married. And therefore, 1 week after Pesach, he has to move back. His wife is due 1 week before Pesach. And 1 week after Pesach, he has to move out. He didn't make much of it. He said, big deal. We'll rent another apartment instead. He starts calling people to rent an apartment. But 2 things changed. One was that from the time he signed the contract years before in his apartment, rent was still cheap. And his landlord was nice, only raised it a few dollars a year. Now rent is expensive. The second was that nobody wants to rent an apartment to somebody with 8 kids. They're going to destroy the apartment. He says phone call after phone call. He would call people and tell them, I want to rent your apartment. He'd say, I have kids. Yes, how many? 8. And they would just hang up. They wouldn't even answer. He said there was a point that he even told people that he is willing to sign a contract saying that he'll give back the apartment in better condition than he got it in. Meaning he'll take any renovation when he has to leave on him. And even then they wouldn't give him the apartment. And then comes the night. And this is an interesting night. It's the night before Pesach. He has the holiday of Pesach and 1 week to get out and nowhere to go. And on that morning, meaning the morning before Erev Pesach, he made a Brit Milah for his 8th child. His wife is holding a newborn, an 8-day-old baby. He gets a phone call. He gets a phone call from a neighbor on his block, which happens to be the mohel that did the Brit Milah that morning for his son. And this phone call goes like this. Listen, my friend, there's a woman who lives in Herzliya. Herzliya and Bnei Brak are not that far, but figure, I don't know, 40 minutes if you have a car, 35 minutes, something like that. But he doesn't have a car, so it's a couple of buses. Who called me? And the way she has my number was years ago I did a Brit Milah for her son, so I'm the only Orthodox person she knows in the world. And she said that her and her husband, in their life, never did anything to do with Pesach. Religion didn't speak to them. But for the first time, they want to do something to do with Passover. Passover itself, they don't plan on keeping. But they want to do B'dikat Chametz. I don't know what you're looking for if you're keeping a Chametz, but that's what they wanted to do. Maybe it's some tradition they had in their mind from their parents or something they saw when they were young. And this mohel tells this guy who had a baby that morning, and he knows it. He did the Brit Milah. He said, I'm very busy tonight, but maybe you could go. The guy's with 8 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment, just made a Brit for his son that morning. It's the night before Pesach, and he's calling him to go to Herzliya to do Bikat Chametz for a lady who openly says she's not going to keep Pesach. It doesn't get crazier than that. And he says instinctively he was not only going to say no to the gentleman, but he was going to tell me, you're nuts? You're wasting my time? For what? And then he said, maybe this is God's test to me. Maybe this is what God wants me to do. And he thinks it through, and the halakha aspect of it, and he says, there's no bracha levatara, you can do bikat chametz as long as they clean one room, and so on. And therefore, a mitzvah will definitely be, I'm going to do it. And he says, give me the address and the phone number, I'm going. And he goes. He shows up to Herzliya that night after he's done with his Bikat Chametz, and he does Bikat Chametz with this elderly couple as he describes them. And when he's done, it was, they didn't want too long of a ceremony. He goes to them and he wishes them well, and he's going to say goodbye. And the lady turns to him and says, do me a favor. And she says, what? Where do you live? He says, Bnei Brak. He says, that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. And he turns to her and says, why would you be hoping to hear that I live in Bnei Brak? What do you and Bnei Brak have in common? He says, I'll tell you why. I'm a real estate investor. I'm partners with European investors, specifically one French individual, and we buy properties in different places and we rent them out or resell them depending on the situation. This partner of mine has one son, this is what she's telling this rabbi, who went nuts and became religious. Went nuts and became religious. And he got married. Now, being that he's my partner, and his son's getting married, he wasn't going to put it. His son told him, Dad, living in France is not for me. You can't be religious here. It's harder. It's this. It's that. I want to live in Israel. And he said, sure, no problem. Where do you want to live? Bnei Brak. He said, if that's the case, I'll buy you an apartment in Bnei Brak. He said, and he calls me, because I'm the one who lives in Israel, the partner who lives in Israel, and says, find an apartment for my son who's getting married in Bnei Brak. So we found an apartment. We renovated it. We made it as gorgeous as could be. We even extended it from a 2-bedroom apartment to a 4-bedroom apartment, which in Bnei Brak terms, that's a mansion. 4 bedrooms in Bnei Brak, you got to be really rich for that. And you won't believe what happened. 3 weeks after his wedding, his wife was in Israel. She decided she can't deal with it. She misses her family. It's too hard for her. And they have to move back to France. And a week ago, they moved back to France. They said, now, I'm stuck with an apartment in Bnei Brak. I don't know anything about the Bnei Brak market. I don't know who to rent it to. I don't know who to sell it to. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know anything. Maybe you could hook me up with somebody who has interest in an apartment. He says, listen, ma'am, I'll be honest with you. I'm looking for an apartment, but I don't know if you want to give it to me because I already got burnt many times. So he says, what's the problem? He says, I have 8 kids. This is a rental, you're right. We can't give it to you. But as a purchase, that I'm willing to give it to you. So he says, but I don't have money to buy the apartment. So listen, this is not mine. I didn't buy this apartment. It's my partner's. Money, talk to him. It has nothing to do with me. She writes down a name, a phone number, wishes him well, and lets him go. The following morning, Erev Pesach in the morning, the gentleman says, if God sent me this paper with the phone number, let me call. Picks up the phone, he calls France, he gets a hold of this gentleman on the other end of the line. He said the name, I don't remember, but he's a famous name in the real estate investments, especially in Israel. And he says, my name is so-and-so, and tells him the whole story of the night before. And the guy hears the story and tells him, I'll sell it to you, no problem. And he gives him a price. The price is $1.7 million. This gentleman in his life combined never earned $1.7 million, nor does he have plans on doing so. He earns $200 a month in Kolev. That's what he got. And he starts stuttering on the phone and he tells the guy, I appreciate your time and I'm sorry I bothered you, but I'm a Kolev guy and it's above my budget. And the guy tells him, so what's in your budget? And he says, I can make payments of $200 a month. That's what he tells him. I don't know how he wasn't, I would be scared to say such a thing. I can make payments of $200 a month, that's what I have. He says, so how are you living now? He says, I have an apartment that's a rental and it's more than that, but we barely swing it by. So he tells him, how much are you paying rent now? So he tells him 1,700 shekel, which is crazy cheap on Bnei Brak terms. And he tells him, you know what? My dream was, I'm not religious, but my son is religious. And my dream and my pride was my son living in Bnei Brak and studying in Kol. It didn't work out because of his wife and that, and I respect that and I'm happy he came back because honestly I need my son near me. But I did lose out on what I always wanted, deep down, to have somebody in Bnei Brak learning in Kol. The apartment is yours, pay me 1,700 shekel a month for as long as you can. Here's the deed. A day after Pesach, this Frenchman flew into Israel to make a bank closing on a few $100s a month on a $1.7 million project. What does God do to a person who has to come through and does the right thing when it's hard? When everything is screaming, don't do it, this is insane, it makes no sense. He says, I will reward you with whatever it is you need. My gift to you is there are so many times in life that you're going to be facing peer pressure. That the street's going to be screaming with flashing lights and sirens, come to me! It's at me! I got it all! It's right here! And I'm not going to give you the story if they have nothing to sell. Because I think that's not being honest. They have what to sell. They have a lot of entertainment, they have a lot of amusement, they have a lot of fun, they have a lot of exciting things out there. But there's also a much greater entity that's saying, come to me. In a much more silent voice, because sanity is not yelled. And that's Borei Olam himself. And he says, maybe tonight you can fight. Maybe tonight you can postpone your outing by at least 1 hour and reassess what you're about to do and the consequences that may come along with it, physically, spiritually. Maybe tonight you'll be proud that you're a Jewish boy instead of trying to cover up for the fact that you're a Jewish boy. Maybe and only maybe tonight you'll be successful. Do I have time for one more story, or am I way over my time? All right, you get one more story. Tonight I opened the news feed. Not a good thing to do on a Saturday night. It ruins your week. Just seeing everything that happened over the weekends enough to ruin the week. But I did it anyway. I opened the news feed and I see there was one positive thing there. And I was pretty impressed that news media outlets would still carry a positive story. And it was a story that hit home, and I'll explain in a moment why. A woman was flying from Orlando to Philadelphia Airport on an American Airlines flight on December 6th, non-Jewish woman, and she had an ill child that was going to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. That's why that story touches home, because I volunteer there whenever I'm on the East Coast. And she boarded the plane first because of her child's disability. And we're talking about a baby, an 11-month-old baby. And at the end of the boarding process, a gentleman who was sitting in first class goes to a flight attendant and says, I don't need this seat. I can sit there just fine. She's holding a baby in an oxygen tank. Why is she sitting there? Tell her to come sit in my seat. The story went viral on all the social media outlets when she posted how nice it was for a gentleman to give up his seat and so on. I saw the story. I said, you know what? It's nice to see that humanity still exists. And it reminded me of a little incident that I had, I'd say about 6 months ago myself. I was flying on a Singapore Airlines flight going from JFK to Frankfurt. There's a stop in Frankfurt and then a continuation an hour and a quarter later to Singapore. And I'm sitting in my seat, and we're about an hour into the flight, and it was a Rosh Chodesh. And I have to pray based on the way the time changes were then. It's already almost nitz, and we got to put on, if you can't pray by the minyan, what should we do? But at least pray by the nitz time. Now, some of us would say, what's the big deal? Jewish pride, right? Take out your tefillin and put it on and pray. That sounds right, right? Let me ask you a question. If you were sitting, forget about being Jewish for a second. If you were a regular person sitting on a plane and saw somebody strapping himself up with black wires, how would you feel? Not so comfortable, right? How do you think other people feel when you do that on an airplane? Exactly that way. Now, I'm not saying don't put on tefillin, but at least go to the crew, explain to them what you're going to do. They're, by the way, trained today ready for this because of other incidents that happen throughout the world. And they will tell you what's most comfortable for passengers. So I was going to go to the crew, but then the Yetzer Hara came to me, and he sold me a good story. He says, what do you have to go to the crew for and tell them that you're putting on? Just bring your seat quietly, do your own thing yourself quietly, and you'll, afterwards, when you land, anyway you're going to go over there to the Chabad Shul in Frankfurt, you'll go there to the synagogue, you'll put on tefillin there like a normal person. And the Yetzer Hara has convincing cases. Over there it's more comfortable, you'll be able to put it on the right way, here it's tight, you're sitting like this in a seat, it won't be so comfortable, like this, you know, he's toying with me. And I'm embarrassed to admit, but I was almost convinced. But then it came back to me what Chazal said, that if a person doesn't put on, says Kriyat Shema without wearing tefillin, it's K'me'id Edut Sheker Al Atzmo. It's like he said, it's a false testimony on himself. I said, so how am I going to say Shema, pray Shema without putting on tefillin? What type of nonsense is this? So I walked up to one of the flight attendants. The Asian flight attendants are trained to be very polite and understanding and accepting of everybody and everything. It's in their culture. And I tell her I'm Jewish and I have to pray, and it entails putting on something called tefillin, and I showed her a picture on my phone because she didn't know what I was talking about. I said, I don't want to make any other passengers or you or any crew members feel uncomfortable. What do you, like, how do we go about this? I said, and I'm limited on time. I have about a 10 or 15 minute window before I got to start. So this has to be a quick decision. The woman tells me, I can't make the decision. I have to ask the purser, the head of the crew. 3 minutes later, a gentleman walks up to me, introduces himself, tells me he's the purser. Yeah, what's the problem? I said, no problem, life is beautiful, but this is the situation. And again, I repeat the whole story. I have to pray, and this and that. Here's the picture, this is what it looks like. Talit, Tefillin. He says, how long does this ceremony take? He tells me. I said, listen, today is like a semi-holiday, so it's a longer one than the usual. You know, somewhere between 45 minutes, an hour, around that. He tells me, I can't make this decision. I got to speak to the cockpit. Thank God he didn't say to the president of Singapore. Otherwise, I'd still be waiting for an answer. But he took me very seriously. He walks up to one of those, internal phones that they got on the plane, and he calls the cockpit in. Comes back to me maybe a minute later. I was watching him from far, waiting, looking at his facial expressions to see where this is going. And he tells me, sir, come with me and bring your prayer goods with you. That's what he tells me, bring your prayer goods with you. So as I'm walking with him, I tell him, where are you taking me to? I was scared he might tell me to use one of the bathrooms or something. Tells me, listen, in the public forum, passengers might feel uncomfortable, and you don't have your privacy. Prayer is a very intimate thing between man and God. He's giving you Musad in the sky. And why would you want the distraction? I called the cockpit. They have a back room that's their restroom. It's not being used for the next hour. The pilot gave you clearance. You can go in there, go do your prayers over there. There's a pilot, a co-pilot, and a first officer in the cockpit who are sitting, and instead of flying the plane, looking at me the entire time. And at the end, when I was done my prayer, I already took advantage. Shacharit, Hallel, Musaf, singing, all the Kabbalah I knew was over there. Unbelievable. I'm finally done the whole thing, and the first officer turns to me and says, sir, we want to have a chit-chat with you. I said, okay. He says, we were very happy to do this for you. We respect religion, all religions, we respect mankind. We're very, very happy to do this for you. But we got a question that's been bothering the three of us, and we've been talking while you were praying and singing over there. You're in the sky. You're on the first leg of a flight that has 2 legs to it, and in total is a 19-hour story. You don't think your God is going to understand if you skip one of these prayer services? You don't think he'll get it? He'll understand. For that, you have to go so crazy. Beginning of a long journey, rest, relax, sleep in your seat, whatever. For that, you have to go so crazy. I told him, I'll tell you the truth. I met God before I was born, but I don't remember it, because he made me forget it before I was born as well. So what he thinks it doesn't think, or what he understands it doesn't understand, I don't know. But what I do know is this. If he doesn't, maybe not so great. So I have nothing to lose by doing what's right, and I have everything to gain. I have what to lose by doing what's wrong, and nothing to gain. So my little discomfort of asking for a favor, not worth the risk. And I'm not willing to take the gamble to find out once it's too late. This total awkward silence in the cockpit. Awkward is an understatement. One of the 3 gentlemen tell me, that was impressive. By the way, I'm Jewish. I look at the guy, there's a little suspicion, and I say, is this a prank? He says, no, we're serious people in cockpits. We don't play pranks. I said, if that's the case, maybe you want to try the prayer service too. Maybe you want to try the prayer service too. He said, listen, I don't got an hour now. I said, I'll give you the short version. It's 2 minutes. You put on the straps, Shema Yisrael, you take them off, you did your job. Some Rishonim hold that even if you put on tefillin once in your life, you're not a Motzaey Shabbat anymore. The guy did it. I don't know why, I don't know when, the Jewish spark, he did it. He even took a selfie of himself. It just shows where the generation's older. You ever see on a Singapore airline advertisement a pilot with a tefillin, you know it was mine. But now, how does Hashem pat you on the back and you do what's right? The guy gives me his phone number and tells me like this, my friend, first of all, I already called in for the rest of this flight, we upgraded you to first, and for your next leg as well. Second of all, we have something called a buddy pass, that we're allowed to bring an acquaintance or a family member or something at a cost that's comical. You pay just the taxes. Every time you want to fly somewhere on our airline, send me a text before. As long as there's vacancy on the buddy pass rate, you got it. Trust me, Singapore Airlines and me are very good friends these days at a very cheap price. One morning, one tefillin, not only saved the Jew, which was the most important part, forever of being a Motzaey Israel, but when you make the right decision, God comes back to you and says, you went flying high spiritually, I'll let you fly high in class for the rest of your life, materialistically as well. Chanukah Sameach, you should all be blessed.